Good morning, everyone. I call to order the June 2025 meeting of the Governance and Policy Committee of the University of Minnesota. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for everyone who's joining us in the West Committee Room. While today's meeting is not live streamed, it is being recorded and will be uploaded and archived to the board's YouTube channel after today's meeting. Our first item of business this morning is to discuss changes to digital accessibility and the impact on board policy. I would like to note that this is a flipped presentation, so the full video is available in the docket materials, and we all had a chance to review those before today. Jason Langworthy, Associate Secretary, and Krista Overby, Communications and Engagement Manager, are here to answer any questions we may have. So Associate Secretary Langworthy, would you like to frame up our conversation today?
Yes, Chair Verhalen, members of the committee, good morning. So as noted in the flipped presentation, the Office of the Board of Regents will be making changes to the board policy template to align with regulations issued by the Department of Justice related to Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So the biggest change to the university community that you'll see with board policy is shifting from using PDFs, which you'll currently find on our webpage, to actual web pages to house the content of board policy. To make that shift, we'll be making some changes to the template and the page design format, which OBR is charged with determining those policy conventions and that distinctive format and page design. The charge that we have in the Office of the Board of Regents is certainly to make sure that board policy is easy to use and understandable, and both in terms of content and in the delivery format. And so a large part of our work is working with policy implementers to make sure that the language that's used in board policy isn't too technical, doesn't have a lot of legalese. I think it was a good example yesterday with Board of Regents policy, academic misconduct, now research misconduct, in the way that we work with those policy implementers to help to do that. We also want to make sure that, frankly, the format itself is accessible to every member of the university community and also easy to use. And so as we note in the presentation, we have some board policies that are currently outside of our current conventions. And so when we update and we shift to the web pages, our plan is to bring those policies into alignment. We've been slowly doing that when they need to be open for substantive amendments. But at this point, given the opportunity, we're going to make those alignments. And if we feel that anything would impact the policy itself, we'll certainly bring those back for the board's review and action. Otherwise, we'll be making these changes to align with these new conventions. And so Communications and Engagement Manager Overby and I would be happy to answer any questions. We would also welcome any input you have as you've used board policy in terms of the template, the format, the design. Should we keep Roman numerals? Would you prefer to use a funner font like Comic Sans? Interested in feedback, this is the opportunity as we shift this format and move to web pages. So Chair Verhalen, we'd be happy to hear your input or answer any questions.
Thank you. As people gather their thoughts, just a couple items. One of the things that is highlighted in here is that we'll be switching PDFs to the HTML web pages. Will all of those still be formatted in a way that they can readily be created into PDFs for people who want, or proper print templates, so that if someone wants to print it out, it prints nicely, not like some wild HTML web pages?
Yep. Thank you, Chair Verhalen, members of the committee. Yes, we have been working with members of the University Marketing Communications web development team to create a new template for the HTML formatting, and it will include a print button in the upper corner. And then when you click the print button, it will include text on each page saying the date that it was printed, and then it'll have the name of the policy, and everything will be available to fit on an 8.5 by 11 page.
Perfect. Okay. And do we use Arial font or Times New Roman? It's a genuine question. And the reason I ask is because there are some programs that have issues with Arial because I's and L, capital I's and lowercase L's look identical. So that's why I'm asking the question.
Chair Verhalen, currently, as we're using Word and then moving into PDF, we use Cambria. but we will certainly see what options are available in terms of the web development and ensure that that font is best practice, and also will likely align with university standards across web pages.
Okay. Other questions?
I really think that the lettered list should have the parenthesis versus the period. I'm kidding. I'm reading what the options are here and going, this really had to come to governance, okay? I understand the need to comply and for reformatting, but some of this is truly in the weeds, even for me. As the queen of editing.
And Chairman Halen, Regent Mayron, yes, we totally understand. We wanted to be transparent though with the board. So when suddenly things shift, that we at least gave you that FYI.
No, it does feel very in the weeds, but it is, as we've talked about, very meaningful work to make sure these are accessible and to everyone. And it's really interesting, at least from my perspective as someone who also enjoys debating the Oxford comma, where technology can and cannot kind of process what's actually happening with the text to make it accessible for someone. So this has been an interesting exercise from that perspective.
And Madam Chair, if I
Yes.
just could, and this is a federal mandate that all university websites and departments are going through, and this is a massive undertaking to do this. I mean, this is a small little piece here that we have on our websites, but there are dozens and dozens and dozens of people, hundreds of people working on this to meet the federal deadline to make all websites accessible. And so you're seeing a glimpse of it. So, you know, in addition to all of this granularity, just multiply that by hundreds and hundreds of times. People are going through and trying to sort through this and ensure that everything is in compliance. So it gives you also a glimpse of some of the work that needs to be done in order to accomplish these outcomes.
Yeah, and all of that requires time, which requires people, which requires money, which requires administrative expense.
And if I may, Chair Wilhelm, so, and most of this is being done without additional personnel.
Right.
So we are asking our more of our employees to get to, as we often do when there's new administrative and federal compliance requirements, we have to meet those without adding additional people and staff to do it. So, yeah, our people are stretched thin. This is a big lift all across the university to update every single website to make sure everything is ADA compliant, which is the right thing to do. But the lift is really big when you're the fifth largest employer in the state and you have a lot of information.
Yeah, the timeline's tight. Regent Turner.
Thank you, Chair Van Halen. So what you're saying, President Cunningham, is that you're actually not spending any extra money to do this because you're the same people.
Yeah, I don't want to quote down to the dollar that it doesn't cost anything, but overwhelmingly, we are not hiring legions of people to implement this giant amount of work that needs to happen for to get all of our websites to be ADA compliant, which means many of them need to be reprogrammed, moved to different formats. Every document on them needs to be made sure and checked. So every department, every school, they're all getting the guidance. All of those IT people and their communication people are getting the guidance. We have our own central staff that then those central administrators, which then are providing the toolkits for the guidance that people like Ryan get then so they know what to do here. All of that is the extra kind of work that gets done sort of as part of routine administrative work across the university. Yeah, that has to be done.
Just one extra thing on the checklist.
Yeah.
Right, and not to beat a dead horse, but it's like, this is a federal mandate, so it has to be done. And so whatever time and money and resources that are used, we have no option. Correct?
Yeah,
Correct.
This is not something we've just decided sounds like a good idea.
Right. As is true for many, many, many additional regulations and mandates, which are also good ideas, but require staff and people to dedicate lots of time and hours to do them, which is, why one of the reasons, again, we think that, supporting our workforce in these times is really important. Yeah.
Anything else from anyone? very much for the time that it has taken to look into our websites, figure out what we need to do and how to improve and meet these mandates as we go forward. Thank you. Our second item on today's agenda is to review the proposed amendments to the Board of Regents policy namings and renamings. Taking us through the amendments are Associate Secretary Langworthy and Patricia Porter, the Executive Vice President of Development at the University of Minnesota Foundation. Secretary Langworthy, please proceed.
Chair Verhalen, members of the committee, will start on page 15 of the docket. These are changes to Board of Regents policy namings and renamings, and typically board policy amendments come in two primary ways to you. Either they come as the result of a comprehensive review, which takes place every 6 years, or they are specific off-cycle time-sensitive changes that are impacting a specific area of the policy, and that's where these amendments fall. These are off-cycle changes that have come at the request of the University of Minnesota Foundation, working with the administration to adjust gift naming thresholds that are in that start there on page 15 in section 5 subdivision 1. And so UMF Executive Vice President for Development, Patty Porter, will take you through the rationale of what is being updated and what is being added.
Thank you. Chair Verhalen, Vice Chair Maron, members of the committee, thank you for your attention to this matter today. I'm really pleased to present for your review the University of Minnesota Foundation's plan to increase these fund minimum levels for these endowed positions that are governed by Board of Regents policy. These include endowed chairs, endowed professorships, and faculty fellowships covered by the policy. And we are also proposing the addition of two new minimum levels, one for endowed deanships and one for endowed directorships. So specifically, we're proposing increasing the endowed chair minimum from $2 million to $3 million, increasing the endowed professorships from $1 million to $2 million, maintaining endowed faculty fellowships at $500,000, and then adding endowed deanship minimum at $5 million and an endowed directorship minimum at $3 million. So increasing these position minimum thresholds is part of our review of all endowment levels that we've gone through, and these specifically are the ones governed by board policy. The need for this increase reflects two realities, we believe. One is our growth as a development program and our ability to raise money at these levels, and the importance of providing higher levels, the deanship and the directorship in particular, providing those kinds of resources to the colleges and to the leadership. The second reality is inflation and the desire to make sure that the purchasing power of our existing levels continues to stay strong. We want to make sure that we have the power to both recruit and retain faculty, and providing a stronger spending stream off of these funds is really very valuable for our faculty. We've taken the time to benchmark. We did a lot of benchmarking with our Big Ten peers to set our new levels. And we've also taken a fair amount of time, over a year, to socialize the increases with our development community and our deans. So we've made sure that they are comfortable, that they recognize the need for these increases, and that our development officers are prepared to go out and seek those new levels. Our key considerations that for the timing, we want to take this step now in preparation. We're between campaigns. We wanted to take the step now to set these new minimums. And we also have noted, and I will note to you, that these minimums were last increased 20 years ago. So the endowment minimum overall was increased in 1999 before Campaign Minnesota, and our faculty position minimum was last increased in 2003. So we have been falling behind our peers. We feel like this is important timing. I do want to point out, too, that these are indeed minimum levels, so a school or college could choose to set the threshold higher than that for a deanship, for example. Or, of course, a donor could choose to give more at these levels, although they tend to give at the level minimum, and they rarely go above that. But so we wanted to set them aggressively enough that they would, the minimums would provide what is needed. We've reviewed these new levels with President Cunningham and with the provost, and we are now bringing this forward for approval from the Board of Regents. So I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
And then, Chair Verhalen, I'd like to note two other items. As Executive Vice President Porter just said, units have often set higher minimums for some of these gift namings. And so included in the language is now a new delegation of the president or delegate to authorize units to establish those higher minimums. And so that they can establish those, then they can sort of broadcast them, they can, development officers can make those clear. So that's a new piece in the policy as well. The other item, since we are looking at the gift namings, is on the bottom of page 17 in the docket, which is new language with East Cliff, namings associated with East Cliff. So typically for a building, when there is a room or a part of a building that is named, those gift namings fall under other portions of this policy and work their way through. UMF vets those, and then they would either go to the unit head like a dean or would go to the namings committee, which is convened under the president's authority. As we do with other items related to East Cliff, we sort of move those out from the president's sphere of influence, so to speak, and we route those to the East Cliff Advisory Board. So when the board decided to retain East Cliff and to provide the opportunity to transfer funding to philanthropy, they were interested in providing opportunities for gift namings of rooms or a part of the grounds of East Cliff. So to do that, we're simply adding new language to make clear that once those namings complete the normal process and are ready for approval, they would route to the East Cliff Advisory Board. So with that, we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Before we start discussion, one thing I wanted as a point of privilege, because I was chair of this committee when we adopted this policy. This is something where we intended to be nimble. We intended to, because this was new and we were doing this, we intended to be able to come back on this, to be able to make changes as we went along, because things will come up that weren't necessarily anticipated or that need some attention after 20 plus years. And that this is exactly what was intended by that approach at the time. Of we could have kept continuing to iterate on the policy, but adopted the policy with the intent of bringing issues forward as they came up, even if they were off cycle. So Regent Hipsch.
Yeah, I have two questions. First one is are the minimum amounts designed to cover the full cost?
Thank you, Chair Verhalen, Regent Hipsch. The chairs can use the money in various ways. So often a portion of it goes to staff, to salary and fringe, but it can also be used for graduate students in a lab or things like that. So it's really hard to say if it covers the full cost. Probably not in many cases, but it provides flexible money that can be used in multiple ways by the chairholder.
My second question is if you endow a specific position, and it's no longer needed, what happens to that endowed position? I mean, let's say we go out of that, which could happen, right? And then do you have to pay the money back? Do we get to keep it? Do we not? How does that work?
Regent Hipsch, no, we do not have to give it back. We would be repurposing that endowment then, which is a process that we do anytime we have a program or a gift fund that is no longer needed or appropriate.
So if the Turkey Growers Association endows a turkey position and they're no longer raising turkeys, they can say, well, we're going to do a chicken position. How do the turkey growers feel about that? You know what I mean? I think that could happen.
So the donor would have to agree to what the repurposing is.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly.
I'm in the weeds a lot. I'm sorry for that.
Executive Vice President Porter, just to that point, a lot of those terms are in the agreements that are entered into with these donors, correct? So it is very clear on the front end. Yes, you will fulfill benefactor or donor intent, but here are the provisions that kick in should that intent no longer be feasible or prudent. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. Thank you, Chair Verhalen. That is true. Our memorandums of agreement have a CyPRA language section that specifically says that if it can no longer be carried out according to the original purpose, that we will work with the donor to repurpose, and if the donor is not alive or available, then we will do whatever is closest, what is in the spirit and in the same range as what the donor intended.
Thank you for that clarification. President Cunningham, did you have something to add?
No, I mean, I might just add, Chair Rahelian, and thank you. And this happens kind of all the time over the natural course of time of any long-ranging institution. I imagine at some time, perhaps we had funding for, a chair of stenography. For example, over time, those funds would need to be moved to something. You would never give the chicken growers the turkey thing. No, that's not right, Regent hips. But anyway, so the foundation does this all the time, over time, as as field shifts and things happen. But they're very committed to the donor intent and working with the families on making sure it's a very legal process of the contract to make sure the donor intent is respected.
Are there other questions? Regent Mayron.
Yeah. Ultimately, do you think these changes are going to help fundraising, are going to hinder fundraising? What will ultimately, do you anticipate, and based on what happens at other universities, what's the impact on fundraising?
Thank you for the question, Chair Mayron. We think it will at least maintain, probably even increase. Our goal, of course, is to continue to increase the number of chairs, professorships. It's nice to have a new opportunity at the dean and directorship level to really formally take that out and socialize that with donors. I think it will be popular. We see a lot of our peers endowing deanships, and we see donor interest in that level, especially when deanships turn over and there's, that urgency to have a recruiting pool of money and a named position in order to help recruitment. So we do think it will increase, and we're not, having socialized this with our deans and our development officers, they're not concerned that they wouldn't be able to meet those levels with our donors now.
And then I just have one separate question. So relating to the East Cliff provision, so in the language of subdivision 4, it talks about namings associated with gifts or sponsorships for significant portions of East Cliff. What's a significant portion of East Cliff?
Who would like to take that one?
I can take that.
How will
So
we know it when we see it?
Chair Verhalen, Regent Mayron, so we would certainly use other norms that we use across the university when we're thinking about significant portions. So that's typically a conference room, or in East Cliff, probably the dining room, the event grounds, maybe the pool house, things of those natures that are significant portions of East Cliff. I don't know if the linen closet, the Langworthy linen closet naming would fall under significant. Probably not. But it's really meant, and using other standards that UMF uses, it's significant portions of the space. So hopefully that helps.
And
there's a bit of judgment there.
that was going to be my question. So with that bit of judgment, the East Cliff Advisory Board is really the entity that request would be made to, but with the foundation, working with them we've had this donor or benefactor who's offered to pay X for Y. Is that something that the East Cliff Advisory Board believes is both necessary and appropriate, and those levels, et cetera? Is that how I'm understanding the process, Executive
Yes.
Vice President?
Yes, Chair Verhalen, we have sketched out a number of spaces that we think would be the most popular for naming, but there could be other opportunities that come up that donors feel strongly about. Most of them are, I think currently all of them are on the main floor, where the visibility will be for guests who are there for events and things like that. But we want to maintain some flexibility in case new things come up.
Sure.
Actually,
Yeah.
just add that with the first advisory, or the East Cliff Advisory Board, which I'm now the Regent representative to, a week ago Monday. They're working closely with, UMF, obviously, who's very good at managing all these things. But they have specified levels and what would be the large room, big room namings and that. So they've already gone quite a long ways, and they're a pretty savvy group on that account.
Any other questions on this? So this item is before us for review. Typically, the way our process works is it would be review this meeting, review and action the next meeting. I'm going to throw this out there. So our policies do allow that we can move an item from review to review and action if there are no objections. While we typically follow the process of that stepwise 1 meeting, 2 meeting before taking action, this is something where I'm acutely aware that the foundation is working on the fall new campaign, sorry, the word wasn't coming to me, and planning that. And the timeliness of this seems important. So I'm going to throw out there, and the way it works in our policy is if anyone objects to review and action at this meeting, then we would just move it as planned to review and action in the next meeting. So is there any objection to our committee taking review and action today on this?
No.
Okay, and then just so everyone's aware, if we take our review and action today, this will then be presented to the board as part of my chair's report. If anyone from the board objects to review and action today, they can do that, correct?
Chair Verhalen, typically the way we've interpreted, because the item is for review on the committee's agenda, it converts to review and action. It comes in the committee report, but certainly at that point, someone could request to separate it out and then ask that the item be postponed.
Okay, very good. Held over. Not tabled. All right, is everyone good with that? Okay, so I will move that we accept the proposed revisions to the Board of Regents policy namings and renamings as presented to us today.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Verhalen, members of the committee.
So next we will consider the consent report. Executive Director Steves, will you please summarize the items in today's report?
Madam Chair, the policy amendments that are outlined in the consent report to the policy of solicitation and acceptance are just above the level that would be a technical correction, but we've thought that they would warrant coming to the committee. This, it has really two primary changes. One is the addition of a scope statement and some renumbering associated with that, and the other is a cross-reference. So while the language previously indicated that that the foundation raises funds that are in accordance with that are used in accordance with donor intent and with university policies and procedures, we and the foundation thought that it would be valuable to add some cross-references to the system-wide strategic plan, the annual budget, and the capital budget, so that it's very clear that the funds being raised by the foundation are being used for priorities that you are setting as the president and board. And so that's what that language now does in this policy. So we bring that for you for consideration.
And just as clarification, this right now is currently for review when we,
It's the consent report.
I'm showing it on our docket as for review. Is that a mistake then? It's review and action.
Oh, it is review and action.
Okay.
Mine is showing review and action.
All right.
Are you looking at page 23?
I am. Up at the top where it says mine says.
Mine is saying review and action too, so I have no idea why.
Yeah.
Wow. Once we get our websites updated to ADL, that'll be
I
fixed.
just wanted to clarify that I thought it should be.
Hire
All
somebody to
right.
do that.
In the matrix.
We'll sort that out later.
Can't do that again. That's impressive.
Yeah, but it's possessed my iPad.
It's given up. It's just.
Yeah.
So first, is there a motion to approve the consent report?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on this policy change? It does feel a bit strange to be having to vote on such a minor change, but do appreciate the transparency in bringing this forward as a consent item. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent report?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Very good. Great. Before we move to the information items, I'm going to take one moment to recognize our Senior Associate General Counsel who will be leaving us after this meeting. Carrie Ryan Gallia will be heading off to a judgeship. So congratulations for that, and we appreciate everything that you have offered to this board over the years, so thank you.
Halen. I might make a comment as I rode up the elevators with the General Counsel Peterson this morning and with Carrie. We noted, or he noted that the rain falling down today were kind of tears for the loss of her.
They will be big shoes to fill. Thank you. So that brings us to our information items. Executive Director Steves, anything to highlight?
Madam Chair, the 2025 Board Policy Report is included in your docket as an information item. This is broken into two parts. It is a summary of the policy work done over the past year, with great thanks to Mr. Langworthy and Ms. Marcassani in our office who coordinate that policy work. And then also it is a work plan for the coming year, so you can see the policies that will be up for comprehensive review in the coming year.
Great. We'll be walking through that a bit during our retreat, I'm assuming, in some way, shape, or form, deciding if there's anything additional to add to our list.
Yes, certainly, Madam Chair, if there are additions to it. Otherwise, where you'll most see it is as work plans get developed for the coming year, you'll see these policies start to be sprinkled into there as amendments are coming forward.
Very good. Any questions or comments? I appreciate the summary every year because it's such a good reminder of everything we've done throughout the year, but also kind of setting the stage for the next year and keeping in mind where we're heading. And there are always surprises that come up and last minute items. All right. There being no additional business before the committee, we stand adjourned until 9:15 in the boardroom. Thank you.